Hello, welcome to session 12 of our Conscious Coaches Power Hour. Is this the first slide? Is it? Sorry, everybody. My technicalities, my technical difficulties is sometimes. Anyway, we're going to roll with whatever is happening here. We are a group of sages, mages, wild women, crazy men, and people who are out there experiencing life and learning through experiences and ourselves and our interactions and our education. And with that, we share that with you. We want to include as many people into our own experiences of how we grow and how we flourish so that we can share. That is what our Conscious Coaches is all about. It's about sharing our experiences and how we help other people whilst we're helping ourselves. We're part of a larger group called Solo, which is called Search Others and Love Oneself, which was started by Simona. And it's a wonderful space where most of the coaches, the sages, the wild people, you will find the offerings there. At the end of our webinar, I will share how you can get into the space and how you can be part of everything that is going on there, from events to marketing things and markets and merchandise and all kinds of amazing stuff. So today, I'm super excited to introduce Amy Lee Nelson. She's a shamanic therapist and a sex and relationship coach. Now, today's topic is the pleasure revolution. Healing trauma and reclaiming joy through sensual connection. Now, before I hand over to Amy, I want to say what Amy does is her work is so beautiful and so vital, but it's not just the topic, it is how she approaches it that I find so inspiring and beautiful, because she keeps it real. It is tangible, it is real, it is things, and she will share things with us that we can apply right now. So before I get more tongue-tied, Amy, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Am I audible? Am I visible? We're all good to go. Yeah, thanks for the lovely intro. And let me quickly take over the screen.
There you go.
Here, and we're good. Okay, so I thought I would just introduce myself first. I've got a couple of slides, and I have some questions from people from the network, from the Solo network. And so, yeah, today we're going to be talking about the pleasure revolution. But what's tricky about this topic is that on the one hand, it is all about pleasure, it's all about sex, and it's so sensual and beautiful. And then on the other side, there is this underpinning of seriousness, because the lack of pleasure comes from like deep oppression. And so the movement towards pleasure is actually it's a social justice movement. It isn't just a personal movement. And so I'm going to be blending a little bit of each, keeping it relevant to like community and social justice and freedom, and then also bringing it into like our personal experiences, our bodies, and our own healing journeys. So yeah, a little bit about me. I am a shamanic therapist, which basically means that I have studied psychology and love working with those frameworks, but I'm not a psychologist. And I've been on a shamanic journey for quite a few years. And so I blend those modalities along with somatic work and along with sex work practices. And I find that the combination of these things is so potent, because you're looking at healing in this holistic way. You're looking at becoming. And people come to me for journeys of self-discovery. They're coming to me because they just want to like experience more joy, more bliss. They want to explode out. They want to be enlightened. They want to become healers. You know, people are coming to me to get through very big issues in their lives, but they're also coming with this very big expansive energy, and it's incredible to be a part of those journeys. It's incredible to be a part of every journey. And so we've got that kind of, you know, bringing it in on that energetic side, the spiritual adventure that everybody is on. And then bringing it into the shamanic side, where it's really about like, what is our connection to our ancestors, to the earth, to our bodies, to the elements that create our bodies. What is that? How do we work with it? How do we find ourselves in that space? And you know, how do we work with rituals? How do we work with ceremonies? How do we work with praying to different elements and plants? That kind of a journey, building a sensual connection with nature is incredible. So we've got the, you know, the side where it's spiritual and energetic, and there's a sensuality in that as well, because, you know, we've got like, I mean, just look at Tantra. It is just like this beautiful blossoming of sensuality combined with spirituality and the flow of life force in our bodies. So we've got the sensual elements in both of these areas. And then we go into the mind, and it's, you know, I think that going into somatic work and a lot of these things without really being able to unpick and challenge faulty beliefs and problematic kind of messaging that's come in from our culture and society and everything, to be able to unpick that is where I find the psychology element to be really helpful. And working with those, like, what is this faulty belief system that's coming up, and how do we actually work around it? What are the tools? And then we go into the body, and it's the somatic, the polyvagal theory. And that is like, okay, so we've experienced something. It can't just be resolved up here in our heads, because it's gone into every cell of our body. And so how do we go back into the body, reach into the body's wisdom and go like, okay, you're doing incredible things. I want to understand it. I want to look at what you're doing, and I want to be able to work with you instead of just being a kind of stick in the wind. And working with the body and saying like, okay, here I'm affected by things that happened in my life, but through my body, I can also make changes to the things in my life and the way that I was affected by things. So that's such an incredible, powerful element to bring in. And then there's the sexual part of it, which, you know, for many years, I knew would be a part of my work. And for all of those years, I dreaded it, because I was like, how on earth am I going to work in this space? Like, this is terrible. Like, I shouldn't. Who's going to, like, who will accept this? This is so weird. But it's been part of my calling, and it's been incredible to embrace it, because it's so beautifully ties in with everything else. And there's so much locked into our sexual journeys, and our journey of becoming, and our spiritual journey, as I've just spoken about. There's such a big link. And when you work with somebody who wants to just stay here, you don't get the full expression of that journey. And it also kind of shames this side, because this side is locked away, and it's like, well, I feel like there's a lot happening for me sexually, but like, you know, and a lot of people also like, I'm single, or I'm in a very non-sexual relationship, and it's tough for me to like be feeling all of these needs and expansions, like, what do I do? And so in that, you know, bringing that in to the work allows it to kind of really expand to its full capacity. And the practices that I do, and just the allowing, you know, if somebody just wants to take their clothes off while they're having their session, like, they can do that. And just the act of being able to process while you're sitting there naked, you know, like, it somehow liberates, because it's, you know, you're taking it out of that shame space. It's just like, of course you can, don't worry about it. And it also takes it out of that space where we've been like, you know, like, your psychologist would barely even be allowed to hug you or anything, but to be able to have body contact with somebody in a moment of extreme vulnerability, like, you can hold that person, and that holding is part of the healing. You know, there's something in our nervous systems that overrides every nervous system response that we have naturally, and that is the social nervous system. And so tapping into the social nervous system along with the autonomic nervous system is just an incredibly powerful combination, because you are working with that person in both spaces. And if both of those nervous systems are attuned, then you've got this kind of consistency. Because often when we experience trauma, we have something that comes up internally and we feel like, whoa, that was wrong, that was awful. And we feel all of these things. And then externally, there's almost no reaction. The world is just carrying on. People look the same. People want things to not be spoken about. It needs to be hush. Don't make a fuss. It's not a big deal. And that is like this kind of gaslighting for our nervous systems. And that is actually what causes trauma. You know, that's what causes trauma to stay in us. Because if we were responded to and the outside matched the inside, then we would be able to go, okay, that was intense. And now we're creating safety. And now we're moving through that experience and we're healing. But when there's this fragmentation, that's when trauma arises. So when I bring in contact and body work and sensual touch and just being able to hold clients, it's such a healing experience that I really value. All right, so that's a bit about me and the work that I do. And I'm going to start to talk about this topic. Do you have any thoughts, questions, comments for me at the moment in this little break?
Yeah, what kind of shamanic work have you done? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm checking in with you on what that question is looking for. Can you just specify a little bit more?
Like, is it breath work? Is it medicine work? What is the
Oh,
space that you
okay.
define? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been on a shamanic healing journey, which has just been kind of led by my guides. And so it has really kind of morphed and transitioned. But the work that I do does include psychedelic journey work with people. And then also creating rituals and creating ceremonies, like working with fertility ceremonies, working with people who have very difficult menstrual cycles to kind of realign them with their cycles, and with the moon and the earth, things like that. And then also kind of big sexual becoming ceremonies where somebody is going to a waterfall and connecting with their ancestors and integrating their gifts. Like that's a lot of what I do. And then I also do bone readings. And that is, yeah, I suppose a type of divination technique, but it's just more about like how to work with things that are present and what's coming up and what your higher self is wanting to work with. And then just the kind of, oh, and then also like clearing entities, working with, yeah, strange energy, uncomfortable energy. And then a huge portion of my work is also around supporting people who are kind of coming into their own shamanic journeys. If people are feeling their gifts coming along and they don't know what to do, if they're feeling like they need to do healing work and they're just experiencing all these things and it's strange and new, they often find their way to me, and I help with that process of how to kind of become on your own and how to trust your own guides, how to start listening to animals and how to start tuning into plants, how to find your own tree, things like that. Any other questions before we pop into the presentation?
We've got a couple in the
Yeah.
chat.
Yes, but perhaps we get through the presentation and then we can address the questions afterwards.
Okay, fab.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Okay, here we go. I am going to be I'm going to be cut out at the bottom of my presentation. All right, so as I mentioned, we've got the pleasure revolution, and this is a personal journey, but it's also a political journey. And it comes from like a very big feminist slogan that says the personal is political. And what we come to realize is that a lot of what we are going through is connected to what's happening in this kind of political sphere. You know, the patriarchal structures, how they affect our lives, you know, that directly affects gender-based violence, and that directly affects how we experience our lives and trauma. But then there's also a lot about like the political around our bodies, our sexuality, our expressions of sexuality. All of these things are often policed by society. And so when we're thinking about these journeys, it's important to really hold that in our minds, that it's not just something that we're struggling with in us. And sometimes the answer is through activism. You know, sometimes we need to go and join forces with other people and to push boundaries and to say, like, you know, like getting gay marriage approved, that was activism, but that's also a pleasure revolution and something that's so important and necessary. So I just really want to bring that in and say that that is a big part of my work. But ultimately, this is about your pleasure, just yours. And that's really important because sexual pleasure is a fundamental right. And this is according to the World Association for Sexual Health, that our pleasure isn't just like a really nice thing to have, but it's a fundamental right. It's something that we need to exist as humans. We need to be able to experience pleasure, and sexual pleasure is important as well. So this is something that I find absolutely wonderful and fascinating, because we often think of pleasure as a secondary nice to have, like a sort of, I guess, pleasure. But to look at it from this perspective is really quite, I suppose it kind of honors us and allows us to sink into that, where we can think, okay, actually, it's my right. Like, I should be experiencing pleasure in my life. And it needs to be free from discrimination, coercion, and violence. And also to celebrate diversity. This is like our diverse pleasures, our, our kinks, our orientation, our gender, all of these things are linked to the right to experience sexual pleasure. So here we've got, so what stops us from accessing pleasure? And like I've said, we've got systemic oppression, we've got trauma, which is a result of systemic oppression a lot of the time. And these things lead to shame. And they're often also caused by a lack of autonomy, which is often brought on by cultural pressure and religion and rules around what we can and cannot do with our bodies and our sexuality. So I think it's important to just cover this in that sort of political view, where trauma is a weapon of oppression. Because I think that leading into pleasure, we need to really understand this fully. So on this side above me, we've got trauma. So you experience something and it strips you of agency, dignity, and safety. So in this moment, we don't have a loving witness and we become traumatized. And then we move over to the second part, which is that we remain oppressed. When we're oppressed, we are so focused on survival. And I'm sure that a lot of you can relate to this, where you feel like you're just getting by. You're looking for signs of danger in your relationships, your closest family relationships. Everywhere you are, you're driving, you're just focused on surviving, which leaves us no energy to put into our liberation. And we become disconnected, sick, overwhelmed, and we're basically just making it through the day. From that place, then we go down to self-oppression. And here, the trauma goes inward. We begin to either self-harm or we start acting out with harmful behavior towards others. And this can be through things like numbing, drugs, unsafe sex, and then also antisocial behavior, violence, rape, robbery, self-harm, which can even lead to suicide. And so in this space, it feels like it's absolutely impossible, because now the system isn't needed. We don't need the original traumatization to keep us in this locked up space. And from there, we go to trauma taking over, which is here. So here we've got trauma takes over. We internalize blame, feeling broken, powerless, isolated. We begin to feel like we are like throwaway, we're a problem. We're the ones to blame, and there's something fundamentally wrong with us. And so what we try to do when we're looking at trauma in this cycle is that we think, okay, how do we break the cycle? Where is a good point to intervene? And disrupting the cycle is something that we can do at this stage. We've experienced traumatization, trauma takes over. if we stop trauma from taking over, we can stop this whole cycle. And the way that we do this is to recognize that trauma affects us, but it doesn't define us. And what that means is that, you know, like if we think about somebody who's been in a car accident and they've lost their legs, we're as they were before. We know that they have experienced something traumatic and it has affected them, and they need help, support, compensation, whatever it is. And what we don't think about is how trauma that affects us emotionally does the same thing. But we often just expect that we should just be able to carry on without really dealing with it or getting any support going forward. So we first have to recognize that, and then we go on to learning to spot trauma responses. And that's just being able to go, okay, wait, whoa. I think. And then in that space, we're able to slowly change that patterning from just going straight into it and feeling it and being triggered and not understanding why we just started shouting at somebody, to saying, okay, wait, I'm being triggered. And then in that space, we can learn to regulate ourselves, and we can also begin to rely on community, co-regulation, and supporting one another. So that is the cycle and how to disrupt it. And here we've got to disrupt it with pleasure activism. So I think it's important for us to just understand quickly and get a definition of pleasure activism. It's a political and cultural practice that reclaims and celebrates pleasure as a powerful tool for personal and collective liberation. So it's not just something that's nice to have and nice to get. It's something that's fundamentally linked to liberation. And it's rooted in the understanding that oppression disconnects individuals and communities from their bodies, desires, joy, and pleasure activism seeks to challenge that system of control. And if you think about it, like experiencing gender-based violence and not being able to go out for a walk, not being able to go to the forest, not being able to be alone in nature because you're afraid that something's going to happen to you. This is systemic oppression. This is a disconnect from our natural environment and our desires and our joy, because we're in this system of oppression. So to reclaim pleasure is incredibly powerful. And it's also a way to heal. So firstly, we don't need partners to find sensuality. This is between you and you. A lot of the time people are worried that their journey is kind of in isolation. And what's beautiful is that this big sensual journey is something that actually has to happen within you. It isn't really something you should be doing with others. It's something that you can enjoy and share with others, but the real revolution, the real pleasure kind of injection needs to happen with you, by you. So at this point, I'd like us to just have a little moment. And if anyone has any questions before I start this exercise, we can go for it. But I'm going to do a little breath work, pleasure exercise with us. Any cues? No. Yeah.
Okay, would you like to tackle one of the questions now, or would you like to wait till after, as we agreed?
Let's see, we've got 25 minutes. Yeah, let's go into the exercise now.
Okay.
Okay. So this is an awareness observation exercise, a body awareness process. And I just want you to start to feel into yourself, feel where you are. Are you in a room? Where's the door? Where are the windows? Feel yourself in the space. Bring your awareness to where you are seated. Feel the temperatures on your body. And now I want you to go into a subtle, slow breath through your nose. It doesn't have to be deep. It's just aware. Now we're going to do something that might feel a little bit challenging. But I want us to breathe in. And when we breathe out, I want to feel a little push, like a breath that you would make while you're having sex. So it's like that kind of a breath. Feel your muscles contracting as you make this breath out. Feel like strengthening of those muscles. And feel how your body is responding to that breath. Notice, is your body feeling tense and awkward? Does your body feel like it's giving a yes, let's go? What is happening when you try that out? See if you want to, see if you can make it a little bit louder. Make it a little faster. See what that does to you. Feel it in your body. I notice in me, it instantly raises my temperature. I don't know if anybody would like to share how that made them feel.
I'll go first. Firstly, my body started moving by itself. My body just started swaying. I had this instinct to bite my lip. I actually had to stop myself.
Yes.
And my heart started beating really fast. Yeah, that was me. And I thought like, okay, hey, hold on, you're not alone at home. Just rein it in. Okay, that was my experience.
Yeah. And I mean, isn't that kind of incredible that in those few seconds, you can get yourself into that state just through breathing? Does anybody else have a feeling brave enough to share?
That was terribly mischievous, Amy, to spring that on us. That was delicious. Thank
There
you.
was a slight warning.
That was beautiful. Lovely.
How did that feel for you?
Well, first off, it's familiar, but yeah, very easy to slip into quite an orgasmic state of awareness. And for me, that usually also like Simone was saying, leads to spontaneous body movements.
Mm.
Yeah, I found it really interesting when you brought in the aspect of contraction on the out breath, which is kind of counter to what I've experienced so far. So I was like, okay, let's try this. And yeah, also very beautiful. Like definitely intensified that the sense of pleasure and yeah, and body awareness of energy moving. Yeah. That was just generally
Oh,
blissful. Thank you.
thanks for that share. And MJ, I think I saw you flinching.
Flinching.
Flinch to
Yeah,
share.
flinch to share. For me, it's that aliveness. Yeah, and also that connection to so quickly activate that experience in myself. And like, I mean, for me, it's like my womb twitches. Like it's so visceral. I can feel that
Mm.
centering in my body. Very grounding.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, we've got a raised hand.
Yeah, for me, it was interesting. I was feeling quite dysregulated today, and just those few moments of breath really relaxed me, felt very relaxing. And also, it just felt really healthy to my nervous system to experience that.
Oh, amazing. I'm so glad that that tiny little moment was impactful. Thanks for sharing. Okay. So I think that this demonstrates quite beautifully what pleasure can do in such a short amount of time. I mean, I think we probably did about 3 or 4 breaths together, and there was an immediate shift in how our bodies and nervous systems were responding. And I think that this is, this is kind of a great illustration of how bringing pleasure into your life can start to impact you in ways that are really quite profound and unexpected. And this is an exercise that I do quite a lot. And I do it especially for some reason when I'm driving. So if I'm in between places and I'm just sort of driving and I'm, caught up in the traffic, doing my thing, I just start to bring in that awareness and I start to do my sexual breath work and just like make some sounds while I'm breathing. And it just brings me like this huge wave of joy, this real kind of eros energy flow. And it's just like such an interesting way to shift the energy and the dynamic from, being in that space of like quite stressed, quite activated, and then woof, you're in pleasure again. All right, so I'm going to carry on with the presentation. I'm seeing that there are quite a few questions. Let's see. Instant bliss. Love it. All right, so let me pop us back in there. All right, so how do we start? This is really a guide for when we're in that space of like, okay, I'm actually in the beginning phases of like working through my trauma. This is when we've had a big shutdown, a moment of retraction, contraction. And this can also happen if we start to dissociate. So the first thing to do is to acknowledge the shutdown. So being able to recognize it. What does this shutdown feel like to you? What are the signs? Do you pull away from people? Do you want to be alone? Do you start getting dizzy? Do you start blacking out? You don't hear what people are saying. What does it look like to you? Then we've got creating a safe space. And now I would love for you to all close your eyes. And I want you to connect with your body. And immediately I want you to think of a safe space. Somewhere that's safe for you. Maybe it's hard to connect to that. Maybe it's very easy and you know. Maybe it's something abstract at the moment. If you can think about it like, is it just being under a blanket? Is it being in a room with the door closed? Is it a cave far away? Is it inside a ball of light? Where is that safe space? When you have these moments, you can go to that place, and that's where it starts. When you're there, you can either put yourself away in your mind into that safety, or you can go into your bedroom or, get under a blanket. And then we start to reconnect with the body gently. Start with very small, non-intimidating practices. This can be as subtle as just holding your own hand. Gentle touch, placing your hand on your other arm, on your chest. Hands are really good at bringing awareness. And then you can also do some breath work. There are some really beautiful breath work exercises that you can bring in. My favorite one is a humming breath, which I'm happy to teach anyone who's interested. And then we move on to identifying sensory pleasures. Explore sensations that feel good. This could be like warm water. I remember having one that was just going to the bathroom and letting the tap run over my hands and not needing it to be about washing hands or anything. It's just about the feeling of the water. Scent, also incredible. I have a slide that's all about the different senses and how to get into the sensory pleasures. And what you can do when you're trying to bring yourself out of this kind of a shutdown is to start to engage in all of your senses. The main sensory senses like touch, taste, sight, sound, smell. Are there things that can bring you into that feeling of safety, bring you back into your body? Is it the smell of like fresh mint, or is it the smell of like a deep cedarwood oil that brings you into that feeling of being back in yourself? Experiment with those senses. And then you can start with self-intimacy. And you start by building trust with yourself, exploring your body with curiosity. Notice areas that feel tension. Maybe it's nice to just actually rub your shoulders. Something I really enjoy is feeling the tension inside my arms here, inside my fingers, taking care of yourself. And also touching yourself like you would touch somebody that you care deeply about. You know, how would you touch someone that's really close to you? Would you do a soft tickle on their arm? Would you hold their face? What are the things that you would do to someone that you loved that you can feel when you do them to yourself? This is a really good way to start building an intimate connection with yourself, or to start rekindling it, and also to deepen it. Then we've got the somatic awareness. Think to yourself, what feels good right now? You know, a lot of the time we are programmed to think about danger. So when we are in that state, we go into the threat response and we're thinking, oh, I don't feel good in my tummy. I don't feel safe. This person is saying this and it doesn't feel good. But if we start to train our minds to think of like, what feels good in my body right now? And you try to search for that. Right now, I really like having my leg up here. It feels comfortable and that makes me happy. So then what are the things that bring me comfort and joy? So like I've just said, having my leg in this comfortable position. Maybe I can think then, okay, I also really love like doing some yoga stretches. That makes my body feel good. Let's try that. Then we've got breath to access pleasure. And, you know, this is that, you know, that breath that I did with you, very subtle. You can take it to the extremes. But, you know, to introduce those, the feeling of like, into our breath. This is not just like a breathing in and out, but like a sensuality. And then to also like, you know, if you're feeling it and you're not in this kind of, I'm trying to get myself out of a shutdown, but you can feel into that breath in a way where, you know, you can play around with it. Like, is it a long, quick succession of short breaths? Is it like, or is it like a long groaning breath and like a, What is the difference between those? What happens in your body when you start to play with those different breaths? Then we've got this reframing pleasure as healing, which is vital and which is also why I've explained so much about pleasure activism, because we need to stop thinking that pleasure is a luxury. We need to really realize that pleasure is fundamental to our existence and survival. Then we've got like building pleasure practices, and this is how we can start to bring it in daily. Like, you know, what if we put on music and we dance? What if we dance and we try to feel super sexy? What if we're alone at home and we like get on the floor and start grinding and be like, try twerking, do what you got to do. What if you do that and you start to laugh and it feels like play? Imagine that. Then we can start to feel safe, safe enough to really explore that. You know, what is it like to be naked and dancing like that at home? Like, what does that bring out in you? Then, you know, there's also seeking support, finding people that can help you. You know, I'm here for that. It's difficult to do these things on your own. It's really not. It's not as easy as following these steps, because you've also got things coming up. You're gonna have like memories of trauma. You're gonna have patterns and thought belief patterns and things like that. And so it's really good to have some support along the way. And then also just to celebrate your progress, really just like if you are going from feeling completely numb to being able to gently stroke your hand, Like, this is amazing. This is what it's all about. And I know from my journey that this happens, and then it's just kind of, you go from being in a state of absolute shutdown, and then one day you're like, wait, I don't even know when last I felt that. I'm just feeling okay. Everything is all right. And it gives you goosebumps, and it makes you cry, because it's an incredible journey. So here are a few tips. If you go onto YouTube and find this again and you want to, or you want to take a screenshot. But here are some extra tips for how to use the different senses to help you through these, like to bring you back to either regulate or co-regulate with someone else. And it can be like playing music or looking at flowers, touching an animal, smelling things. All of these different things can really deeply support your nervous system in coming out of a threat response. Okay, so thank you. We're at the end. Unfortunately, we've got these questions, but we have run out of time. Let's chat and see what the consensus is here.
Mute. Yeah, this mute button isn't loving me today. Yeah. So do we have time for one quick question? Then perhaps people can contact you directly and see how that works. If you can answer that, and if there's perhaps one that you think you can answer, that is, I mean, your work is so amazingly intense and beautiful, and I mean, we need like 5 hours of you, Amy.
Yeah, it does feel like an hour is difficult. Surprisingly, my clients generally ask for 2-hour sessions, because an hour always feels so short.
Yeah, they feel it.
Okay, so yeah, I've got, let's see. Roxana, are you here still?
I am.
Hi, I see you've got a question
Hello.
here.
Yes, I was just wondering, when working with trauma, that's coming up in a relationship where it's clear both people have their own personal stuff and you can see it, you're willing to take responsibility for it. From your experience, would you recommend, like I understand the concept that we heal together in community, we're not meant to do this all alone. So would that mean that like working with someone like you as a couple might be the most supportive path versus trying to work individually? Like, what is your experience or recommendations?
Absolutely. Yes. I love doing this kind of work because it is so powerful. Because if you have a partner who can be that sort of support structure in those moments, it's incredibly helpful. And so it can go from being something where there's this kind of trigger pile on to being something where you can catch each other in those moments and be the most supportive structures for one another. And it's difficult, it takes a lot. But it also teaches you individually how to catch yourself in a moment. Because if you say, for instance, you say something to me that triggers me, but you are currently in a triggered space. In that space, I need to learn that what you're saying and what you're going through is your little journey, and it has nothing at all to do with me. And so in that learning, I am already learning how to regulate myself, because I'm going, okay, wait, I'm seeing that there's something coming up in me and it's very stressful, but this isn't about me. This is about my partner, and it's what they're going through. And then you can like attend in that moment and explore and get curious with that person and watch them work through a trigger. And through doing that, you also learn yourself how to work through your trigger and how to be curious. And so like going through that together in a way is almost like doing group therapy, where you're able to work through things internally and externally as a team. So it's really beautiful and powerful work to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that help?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, especially in like the sexual realm where these things sort of appear the most intensely, it feels extremely challenging just as a duo to hold and to, it almost feels like too much. So I'm just wondering if you would then recommend the support of someone like you. I guess it's like, is it possible, or is it like, it feels very advanced? I guess is
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
it's not only possible, but it's powerful. It's beautiful. This kind of work is like where my heart is at. You know, the space where it's like, this is your intimate, beautiful pleasure space. How do we bring that back? How do we create safety in those moments? How do we learn to connect in ways that feel pleasurable again? Like this is absolutely my realm of passion. And I think a lot of people ask, which you might be curious about, and people listening, is around, you know, what does that look like if I'm working with you in this kind of intimate space? And it's really just around the comfort level, you know, is it something that you want to do where it's in your bed, you are having sex, I am there, I'm supporting. We are working with somatic work, the nervous system, learning how to hold each other and regulate and work through things? Or is it something where it's in my space, we come there, we discuss it, you go home and you practice those things? It's really about where you feel comfortable. And it's also something that can be a progression.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I've lost your little image.
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you for explaining.
Okay, great. So yeah, unfortunately, we've gone over time and it is the end. I'm gonna have to make little videos for the other people who sent me questions, and give back to the group on that. But thank you so much for joining me in the space today. I really appreciate all of that, and I also appreciate you trying out the breath work and sharing your experience of it and engaging in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been so informative also, and like so transporting, right? Like one moment we're just sitting here, the next moment we're all moaning. It was beautiful. And also how you bring touch into it, and just the fact that you hold your clients. I mean, it's such a taboo, but it's actually what is needed, that hug, that hand squeeze, that hold, the, you know, embracing and that kind of stuff. That's what we need. We need to be community again. We need to be unified again. We need to become one in these moments and support one another. So I think the work that you do is like absolutely wow. And thank you for doing it. Yeah, big thank you. Okay, there we go. So, believe it or not, folks, this was our last conscious coaches. Oops, have I gone too far? Yes. This is our last conscious coaches webinar for the year. So we've ended it strong, powerful, and full of amazing information. Of course, you can go onto our conscious coaches website or YouTube channel. Actually, we don't have a website yet. Go to our YouTube channel and you'll find all the different installments and episodes and power hours that we've had throughout the last, I think, 10 months. And it's amazing. We had this brainstorm at Carol's house. You remember, Amy? And it was just, here we are, like 10 months later. And it's just beautiful to see how we've grown and how we've been exposed to different elements. So back to the solo group, if you're not part of it yet. There's an online portal where you can just go online and you can have a look at what's on offer there, and you'll find the details of Amy, for example, and you'll find her details up there, and you'll be able to make contact with her from that space. Also, there's WhatsApp groups where you'll find out all about what's available. As I said before, it is events, it is offerings, it is physical, tangible things that you can use and hold. There's medicines, plant medicines, there's shamans, and go and have a look. Spruce it. And yeah, that was our last slide. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that has been a part of this journey, a part of our journey, and in particular to all the coaches who came and presented their offering, because none of us got here just by being here. We all had to walk at times an extremely painful journey to learn the lessons that we and the experiences that we share in this space. So what has been shared over the last 10 months, I can tell you, is that everybody that spoke this in this last year came from an experiential space. It's not just book smart. It isn't just studies. It's things that everybody experienced and went through, and it comes from a very authentic space. And then I want to say a massive, massive thank you to Mary. She's popped off now, but Mary has been spearheading our Conscious Coaches Power Hour for this whole year. And just like, thank you, Mary. We are infinitely grateful to you for just being amazing. All right, everybody, we'll share details soon of what's happening in 2025. It doesn't end here. We're going to regroup, brainstorm, and see what we can offer for 2025 in the same space. So keep an eye out for our next communication.
And I've also popped my phone number in the chat if anyone wants to grab that in the last second. But yeah, it was lovely chatting and so beautiful to connect with everyone. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and have a fantastic holiday if you are going on holiday, and enjoy yourselves.
Okay, awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Right.